Hello and welcome to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig right here in Times Square, and I'm so happy to have Deborah Norville come and visit. She is talking about her latest book collaboration. It is called Think Positive and Live Happy. And I know that Deborah definitely thinks that way because I interviewed you for my book.
I remember.
Your Best Ages Now,
yeah,
and we talked about a whole host of things, including knitting.
Right.
And you're very crafty and creative, but we're going to focus on this book.
Yeah. It's one of the latest in the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which I think has just been so beautifully embraced by so many people. And I'm happy the Chicken Soup people embraced me to let me be a part of this latest one.
So basically this has stories that are about positive thinking and how it's really helpful in terms of changing people's lives around.
Right.
You basically look at it over thousands, right? Thousands of stories, and you pick 101.
Yeah, so the way Chicken Soup works, and what I love about this series is it actually started, more than 20 years ago. A gentleman named Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen had the idea that wouldn't it be wonderful if there was something you could read that fed your soul the same way Chicken Soup feeds you when you're, sick or whatever. And they came up with this book with 101 stories that were all very uplifting and very positive. And they went to the book event and they sat there at the book fair, and 1, 2, 3, more than 100 publishers walked right past them. They finally got a tiny, tiny little publishing house down in Florida to put the first Chicken Soup book out. And of course, it went gangbusters. So now the company is in new hands. The Chicken Soup series continues. And this latest one is called Think Positive, Live Happy. And I didn't write it. It's written by 101 other people. What I did, along with Amy Newmark, my co-author.
Who's been here, by the way.
Who's been here,
She's
like
incredible.
The walk-in positivity.
Nature, yes.
Yeah. And Amy is the publisher. So Amy is Miss Chicken Soup. And so Amy and I went through, you're absolutely right, about 1,000 stories and culled through and came down to 101 that we think will be the right story for you when you're meant to read it.
How did you decide what story would get in the book? Was there something that just stuck out to you as being special?
Well, I think there's kind of categories. And can I reach over and grab the book?
Absolutely,
All right. So what we did is we kind of like just divvied it up into different, let me just turn to one little spot where it changes.
And while you're doing
like right here, find your inner strength. These are all stories that, this will be something that has to do with digging deep and coming up with whatever it is that you need to kind of get over that hurdle. There'll be another one that's all about the whole series of stories that are dealing with health challenges. But you don't want 101 stories of health challenges, right? So we wanted variety, and we wanted stories that we thought would touch men and women at different points in their life journey.
You know what I like about this book, in addition to it being so positive, is that you can look through for a story that really resonates for you. And you talk about this serving as a mentor, right? The role models and mentoring, but they don't take long to read.
No.
And in today's day and age, when everybody is ADD and looking on their phone, you can read one of these stories in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Because it's 2 or 3 pages.
Right.
It's not a big commitment.
I might be a slow reader. Maybe you could read it in 1 minute, but it's really nice that you can walk away and really they're powerful. It's like you want to be a better person after reading these chapters.
What it does? It just takes you like, look, we're in New York, right? You guys can see out the windows all the colorful lights and everything. It's Times Square. It's crazy down there.
Yeah.
The traffic's not moving. And I walked in here like, but we're thinking about these stories, and I'm thinking about specific stories, and I'm not even reading the story, and I can feel my blood pressure going down. I can feel that I'm getting more centered, as opposed to like fried the way I was when I came in dealing with lovely New York. And so I think this is a great book to have on your bedside table.
Nobody wants to have difficult moments.
And we all have them.
Nobody wants to, but yet those are the moments that really help us to grow and get stronger and to see ourselves from a different perspective. Was there one story in there that stood out to you?
Oh my God, there's so many stories that stand out. Honestly, Amy Newmark's story really stands out. Amy is the co-author. She is the publisher of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series of books. And here's what's really crazy, Robbie, when we were working on this book, both Amy and I were diagnosed with cancer. while we were working on this.
We have a picture of you, you are an anchor for Inside Edition. It is one of the longest syndicated shows. You won an award for being the longest female anchor, right?
Yeah, it's just I'm still standing. But yeah, I'm the longest running daily anchor on American television, which is kind of amazing.
And it was a viewer, right, who noticed your thyroid cancer, right? Noticed a lump that you should look into.
She saw a lump, and here's the thing, she was a TV reporter out in California. So she had had a viewer see a lump on her own throat, and her lump turned out to be malignant. And so she reached out to my publicist and said, don't want to alarm Deborah, but I did notice this. This was my story. Please ask her to have it checked out. That was 20 years ago. For 20 years, I've been monitoring. I had several thyroid nodules. 95% of them are benign, and mine were benign for 19 years. And 19 years and 6 months-ish, we had it biopsied like we were doing every year, year and a half, and it was malignant. I'm like, okay, fine. I kind of figured this was going to happen. So I scheduled the surgery and had it done. Amy and I are working on this book. We're going through, another 50, 60 stories. We're picking out the ones that we think we should, hold for consideration for publication. Amy got a diagnosis of fallopian cancer. Much more scary, much more involved. She had to go through chemo, and it was a longer road for her. I didn't have chemo or radiation. While she was working on this, and in fact, the first story in this book is Amy's story, and she talks about how she didn't know how to deal with the fear that, yeah, I'm in remission right now, but this is a scary cancer. You got a 50% chance of having a recurrence. Doc, how do I deal with the fear? So she scheduled an appointment with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist kind of goes through, this is your world, right?
Yes.
Goes through the list of things, do you have positive influences? Do you have mantras that you say to yourself? All this is, yep, check, check, check. And finally the shrink goes, there's no work for me here. You have the tools you need because you work in this area. She reads chicken soup stories 24/7. And so it won't cure your cancer, but you know what it'll do? It'll help you deal with the fear. And what Amy did, and what she tells it so beautifully in her story, which is number one, she says, I gave myself permission to be afraid, but I gave myself to be afraid at the time when I am scheduling my fear. And she said, I will be fearful from 8 a.m. until 8:10 a.m. in the morning. So if it was 6:20 in the afternoon, and she's like, oh, I'm going to have a fearful moment, she's like, nope, that's scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8. Well, you know what happened. Next day she rolls around, it's 8 o'clock, she's had her morning coffee, the sun is out, the day is beautiful. I got nothing to be afraid of. So by allowing herself to feel permission to be afraid, but scheduling it to a, quote, more convenient time, she ended up not being afraid.
So that, in psychological terms, is called cognitive therapy.
Exactly.
Right? Where you're monitoring how you think about basically your life or anything that's going on in your world, and you try to talk to yourself so that you reduce your fear and just basically see things from a much more objective perspective, which really helps us, because we are inclined to be negative. We are inclined to think badly, to feel victimized, and many people think that's because it was designed to protect ourselves. So if we were thinking negatively or fearful from a fearful perspective, we wouldn't get killed in the wild.
And there was a time in human existence when that made a lot of sense.
Right.
But now we don't have to fear that we're going to be eaten by a woolly mammoth, although I might have been hit by some of those crazy taxis out there. But generally speaking, the fear that we feel, the adrenaline that courses through our veins is not needed.
And so
books like these really help to put a damper on it.
I have a patient who deals with a lot of anxiety, and she gets very anxious before she travels. And she's like, should I travel? Should I not travel? And I said, listen, the most dangerous place in your house is the bathroom. Would you ever think of not going to the bathroom? She's like, no, I would never think of not going to the bathroom. So it just puts it in perspective. But you also have used positive thinking. Let's just go back in history. We have a picture of you on the Today Show.
Hair hadn't changed that much,
I actually just saw Bryant Gumbel at Michael's the other day. So anyway, but I watched you all the time. I loved watching you because, as you still are, it was just watching pretty and smart. And I just admired that, still do. But you talk about how you needed to use this positive kind of thinking strategy when you left the Today Show.
Yeah. And I actually wrote a book about it. That was my first book, and it was called Back on Track. And the subtitle kind of says it all, how to straighten out your life when it throws you a curve. And I did talk about my period on the Today Show, but I also included the stories of other women who, let's face it, very few people watching this conversation are going to have their career blow up on national television.
Yeah.
But there's a chance your husband could come home and say, I'm in love, and it's not with you. The doctor could say, we know what's wrong with you, but we don't know how to fix it. The company is growing and you're not growing with us. You know, there are many ways that we can all have a curveball thrown our way. And you talked about cognitive behavioral therapy. I sort of did my own version of it.
Yeah.
I didn't work with anybody like you. I didn't have a shrink, but I literally was so incapacitated after my career ended. I had a combination of post-today blues and postpartum blues. I had my baby and my career ended at the same time.
Weren't you lucky?
Lucky, I don't know.
You're so ambitious.
But I literally did not get dressed. I did not leave the house. I was in upright fetal position, sitting in a chair, and I started very small. And my goal was, today I'm going to take a shower, and I'll get dressed. And if I can get good at getting dressed, and put on makeup, and it's not time to go to bed yet, I'll go out. And that was a multi-week process. But I learned a lot about myself, which I shared in that book. And I think one of the most important things, and I talk about this all the time, is you have to know who you are. Who you are. If you imagine, well, this cup has water in it, so I can't use it, but imagine a wagon wheel. And the center hub of the wagon wheel is who you are. And if that doesn't exist, if you don't know who you are, and that's not like, you know, I'm a psychologist, I'm a TV anchor, I'm an engineer. That's what you do. That's not who you are. When you know who you are, it's what you believe in, what motivates you, why you think you were put on this planet. When you've got that figured out, every decision you make, who I'm going to marry, where I'm going to live, the job I'm going to have, how I'm going to raise my kids, what I'm going to do with these friends, how I'm going to give back to my community. Every decision, if it doesn't have that center hub, it doesn't matter how great of a decision is, it's going to collapse. And so once I figured out who I was, it was a lot easier for me to go back out into the world, because here's the thing. When you know who you are, and I know what my definition of me is, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm bad at. When you know these things, it's like you put on this Kevlar coat of confidence. And those well-intentioned people will tell you, oh, Deb, I don't think so. I'm like, well, that's your opinion, and thank you for sharing. And you just go forward because I know what's right for me. And it's not being like self-centered or a jerk or anything. It's quiet confidence that comes from having done the work.
It's knowing the truth.
Yes.
And knowing that other people can be misguided. And sometimes you know things before other people can. Did you ever say to yourself, oh God, I'll never get into TV again, or maybe other people are right in saying that my career is over? Did you have those moments? It clearly was not the truth.
Chicago Tribune reported that I'd been left for dead on the side of the road. I'm like, I didn't have to think it. They'd already put it out there. It was like, you're not going anywhere, Norville. But that's part of knowing who you are. When you know who you are, it doesn't matter what anybody else's definition of you is, because that's not your definition of you. And so it's funny, you talked about knowing the truth. There's the great line from St. Luke's. It says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And in that context, of course, they're talking about the truth about Jesus Christ. But if you put it in the secular, if you know the truth about who you are, it's incredibly liberating. And back to when you were talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, affecting how you allow yourself to think. The Greek Epictetus said it really well, and you probably know this quote because it's your world. Ask not that events should happen as you will, but let your will be that events should happen, and you will have peace. We can't control what goes on. We can control how we think about it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, but once you figure it out, it's like, thank you, Jesus. It's so much easier.
And part of it is feeding yourself a healthy mental diet, and just trying to just understand that things can happen for you. And it's very hard to believe at the moment when bad things are happening. But that's where support system comes in. That's where having good reading, like reading positive stories, can be tremendously helpful.
It's critical.
And I just want to say that also, we'll have a link up so people can find your book and get it. And it's in, gosh, this is
everywhere.
like in 40 languages as well. I mean,
so cool.
it's millions of copies are out there. Chicken Soup for the Soul. This one is thinking positive and living happier. And we do know that when you do think positive, it changes the chemistry in the brain so that you have happy chemicals going on. And it's just a good way to train your mind to think, because it's something that you need to do daily. It's a daily activity.
And here's the thing, for people who are watching this and thinking, yeah, that's right, they're positive people. This lady's an expert on it. This one's kind of figured something out. But I'm naturally cranky. Well, yeah, guess what? 50% of your mood, your instincts are sort of baked in there, but the other 50% aren't.
Right.
So you can actually do it. I don't think it's 21 days, frankly, I think it's a lot more than that. But you can build that habit, and books like this help, the practice of gratitude help, the practice of getting outside yourself and doing for somebody else.
You gave me great advice for my book.
What was that?
I said, well, what if someone doesn't believe in God, and just wants to have a sense of the spiritual? And you said, get out in nature.
Yeah.
And just experience the beauty. See, I have a good memory for
You have a
everything
very
that you
good
said.
memory.
We do something called the Quick Five, but I just want to say too that when you read a book like this, what you're doing is you are inspiring your sense of hope, which makes a person more resilient.
You bet.
And that's really important, inner resiliency, to get to the other side. We do something called Quick Five, where I ask you some questions.
And I give you a stupid answer?
And you give me great answers, like you always do. Okay. Where do you get your news?
Oh, wow. I watch CBS News in the morning, but
Me
the first thing I see
too.
is whatever's flipped on my phone.
I know.
Whatever the alert is on my phone, that's my first thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I like kind of these, oh gosh, Katie Couric has like these websites and NoPo News where you have all of these like
the
great
newsletters?
Stories that highlight different, news things that are going on. Do you
Yeah,
ever
but
read
you know
that
what?
now?
I don't want somebody else's
You don't want curating
filter.
it? Yeah.
No, I don't. I want to read as many different sources
You're
of
less
material.
lazy than me. That's why you got straight A's in college.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm kind of like, I don't trust anybody else. I'm like super skeptical.
Sometimes that's smart. Okay. When did something start out badly for you, but in the end was great?
Oh my gosh. Something that started out badly. Oh, okay. It was my very first possibility of getting into television. I was told they wanted to hire a weekend weather girl. Who wants to be the weekend weather girl? Lucky for me, I didn't not take the meeting. By the time my meeting happened, they'd found their weather girl, and they hired me as a gopher in the newsroom, and I was on the air 3 days after my internship.
Oh, that worked out very well.
So that worked out.
Yes. What accomplishment are you most proud of?
You're not allowed to say your family, because that goes without saying.
Well,
I'm
you
married.
can.
I'm married 32 years. I have 3 amazing children. And honestly, marriage is a lot of hard work. We all stood there at the altar and said, I do, but there are a lot of times after that you go, but right now I don't. And I think working through the challenges and recognizing that it's a privilege to go through life with a partner.
It really is. Makes life more joyous if you choose the right person.
Yeah, and if you don't choose the right person, here's a great thing. There's this wonderful woman, you've probably met her, Michelle Weiner Davis. She wrote a book called Divorce Busting, and she talks about in a couple situation, you got 2 people, and the law of physics dictates if like these 2 are like this, if one person changes, the law of physics dictates the other person has to change. So you actually can train them.
That's good advice.
Good advice.
Maybe next book is a marriage book?
Oh, I don't know. You know what? I think that would jinx everything. I don't think you do that. I don't think you talk about your great kids. You don't talk about your fabulous husband, because it'll all blow up. You'll jinx it for sure.
I hear you. What's the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Spoken up when no one else would. It's hard to do. It's scary.
If you could shop for free at any one store, which would you choose?
Oh, God.
God, I ended on such a superficial note. Just forget that, but you can tell me anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not like a shopper person.
You're not a shopper?
No.
A knitting store?
No, because I got so much yarn in my stash, I'll never, ever use it all up.
Okay.
It's terrible. I should give it away. Shopping wouldn't be my thing. You should ask the question, if you could go any place.
All right,
That's
well,
a better
I'll ask
question.
That. Go
okay.
ahead. Answer that question.
I would go to Tuscany.
Yeah.
Where life is beautiful, the wine is amazing, and the truffles are insane.
The food's really good.
Yeah.
Deborah, you are just a pleasure to have. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to get this book, read through it, have a link to it. Thank you for joining us. Get this book. You'll be happier, more positive, and have just a greater life. There
Thank
you go.
Appreciate it.